Well, thanks everybody for coming back. I am Michael Thomas. I am your host. This is the Dating While Adulting podcast. Um, yeah, that's what it is. Let's just get into it. First of all, this week has been a weird week. And part of the reason it's been a weird week is because of the things that I've been reading and stuff like that. And it caused me to start thinking, as it normally does, which is what motivated me to start this thing and what motivated me to continue this thing. So, getting to what has been on my mind for the past week. It's funny because it starts with I was reading a magazine article in Spin magazine. I didn't even know Spin magazine still existed. I remember I used to read Spin. It was like the bootleg version of Rolling Stone back then. And I'm sure they don't want to hear that now, but that's the way I always saw it. But anyway, I didn't know it was still around, but hey, it is what it is. But it was interesting because I saw an interview by Sinead O'Connor, and the title of the the title of the article about Sinead O'Connor was, let me get this right. I want to get this quote right. She accused Prince of being a violent abuser of women. Now, when I read that, I was like, whoa, that's pretty serious, especially considering Prince isn't here to defend himself. But I was like, okay, let me see what this is all about. And I want to get this quote right. So I'm going to read exactly what she said in the article. She said, one night, Prince invited her up to some Hollywood mansion where he was living at the time and proceeded to rip into her for swearing in interviews. And then he forced his butler to serve her soup, even though she didn't want it. Follow me now. But the most disturbing accusation is when Prince allegedly sweetly suggested a pillow fight, only to thump her with something hard that he slipped inside his pillowcase. Okay. So after all of that, in the middle of the night, she decided to leave on foot. I guess she didn't have a car, so she left on foot. And she says that he stalked her with his car. He leapt out of the car and started chasing her around the highway. Now, I don't mean to make light of this. Well, I don't mean to make light of this because it's interesting. It's interesting. And we can parse what happened with all of that, and I guess I will a little bit down the road in this episode. But I just find it interesting that the the title was that Prince is a violent abuser of women, and when you go into the details, that's what it talks about. Now, what I wanted to know and what I didn't get an answer to because they didn't address it in the argument in the article is, well, how did all of that end if he chased you down in his car and he jumped out of the car and chased you on foot, I'm assuming on heels, and did you I'm assuming you got away from him, but what happened? Did he just stop chasing you after a while? Did you fight him off of you? Did he do something else to you? It was just interesting to me that in reading that article, it started telling this story and then it just ended like, okay, he chased me around the highway. And that was it. So I don't know. That was weird to me. And what's interesting to me, especially in this Me Too era, where you have to be sensitive in how you approach women, is that when I was reading the comments, and while a lot of people don't like reading the comments, I actually enjoy reading the comments because even though it's easy to dismiss people in the comments, it's just that's just idiots or whatever, those are real people, and the things that they say reflect what they feel and what a lot of society feels, especially in a society of in this era of cancel culture where if you say something publicly you might get in trouble or get berated or whatever. So these people with these comments, they stick behind their keyboards and they type them out, and it's their truth, or as I discussed in the last episode, it's their opinion of what their truth is. But I won't rehash that. But the thing that was interesting in reading the comments was how many people just easily dismissed her. And as a matter of fact, there were like 120 comments, and I didn't go through all 120 because I don't have time for that. I don't make time for that. But what was interesting about it was I didn't find anybody that supported her, not even anyone that gave her like any kind of benefit of the doubt. And now I understand when you read like the details of that story, it does sound kind of silly. And also, a lot of people mentioned in the comments that Sinead O'Connor has had a history of saying some things and exhibiting behaviors that don't necessarily line up with someone who might be mentally there. But what made me what was interesting about that and what that made me think of is where exactly is the line? And when I talk about the line, there's a line between criminal behavior and there is on the other side of the line, there is asshole behavior. And so I think that line gets more and more blurred because back in the day before Me Too and everything, you could do certain things. I don't want to say to a woman, but you could do certain things in relationship, trying to meet a woman, trying to get a woman's attention. That would be considered asshole behavior, but not necessarily be seen as criminal behavior. And now I think those lines are kind of being blurred. And out of all of that, the question to me is when I read that and I put that out there to you all, specifically women, does that make Prince a violent abuser of women? Now, you know, somebody forcing the butler to feed you soup and a pillow fight where he slipped some rocks or whatever into it and hit you with the pillow. Uh, you know, I don't know. I guess it does get more serious though when you're talking about, you were trying to leave and somebody jumped in their car and they chased you down and they jumped out of the car and they were chasing you. And for women out there, we can dismiss this because it's Prince. For women out there, if you are separating the soup stuff and all that other stuff, if you are at a man's crib and you get into it with that guy and that guy leaves and he jumps in his car and he chases you or rides after you or however she describes it, would you see that as criminal? Is that something that I can understand how, depending on how well you know this person, I can see that under certain circumstances causing you to be fearful. That makes sense to me. And I could see how, depending on the circumstances, how that might make you run to the nearest police station, especially if you felt like your life was being threatened or your just general safety was being threatened. But in reading this particular story, it makes me want more context. And I'm kind of torn, as I imagine a lot of people would be, because in any case where there's an allegation of being, in this case, being a violent abuser of women, you don't want to readily dismiss the woman. You want to hear her out, but you don't want to immediately throw the guy under the bus. And in this case, especially when that guy is no longer with us. And without hearing more context of what happened, it's just like this story is just out there. And it's just like, read into it what you will, and that's what it does. It gives way for a lot of interpretation, which leads to more contention, more drama, more speculation, and all of that gets further away from the actual truth because unfortunately in this case only two people really know not only what happened but the context of what happened. And unfortunately one is dead and the other one waited for the person to die before she came out and told this story. So not to say that I think that Prince would have like came out with some kind of rebuttal. I imagine that Prince just would have ignored all of that mess. And not to say mess in a sense that is mess. I don't want to dismiss her, like I said, but just mess in the sense that all of that is just messy. Yeah. So it reminds me of a story actually, and I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole on this one, but I remember once I was dating a woman and she was here at the house and we had gotten into an argument and and she was so mad that she stormed out of the house and just started walking. Now, I had drove her to my house and I was responsible for taking her back home. So when she started walking out of the house, I'm like, "What are you doing?" So I went after her. And so she's just like walking and she's in heels. This was impressive. She's in heels and she's walking at a pace. It's like I have to damn near run to keep up with her. And it's like, I won't get to the details, but there was something going on with me. I was having some health issue and I couldn't like keep her pace. So she's pulling away from me and I'm like damn near limping just to keep up with her and stuff like that. And the whole time she's saying, "Yo, just get away from me, get away from me." And I'm like, "Yo, the nearest bus stop is 3 miles away. You are not going to walk to the bus stop. Just at least let me take you home." It's like, okay, we don't agree. I think you crazy on that, what we were arguing about, but yo, I'm not gonna let you walk home. And she was steadily walking at her pace, and at the time I didn't have sidewalks outside of my subdivision, so she's walking in heels on gravel. And the thing that made me stop was when she started talking about how I was stalking her or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, that's crazy talk. I'm just trying to take you home because it's ridiculous for you to be walking in heels across gravel to get some to get to a bus stop that's 3 miles away so you can catch the bus to get to the train so you can get home. I'm all for being angry and hey, you know, if you have a beef, hey, it is what it is. I'm not knocking that hustle. But in my anger, I'm not going to do something that inconveniences me. If I'm mad at a woman and she drove, there is no way that I am going to prove a point, catch two buses in a train just because I hate her so much that I won't let her drive me home. I'll be hating her the whole time while we in her car going back to my place. And I'll make the decision never to see or speak to her again. But there's no way in hell I'm walking 3 miles to a bus stop to catch two buses in a train. And I'm not exaggerating. It was two buses in the train to get her home. Yep. But when she said that mess about me stalking her and all that stuff, I was like, all right. And plus, I had already walked a mile at that point trying to catch up with her. It was just a mess. It was just a mess. I say all that to say that who knows what happened with that? Who knows what the context of that was? And and yeah, so I don't know. But also, when you put in context, when you put the whole story in context, he forced his butler to feed me soup and he hit me with a pillow that he put something in. It kind of detracts from what seems to be the most serious accusation, which is him running her down in the car and all of that stuff. And without context, yeah, but that's my dating story for this episode. Don't get me started on that because that'll go down a whole different rabbit hole, which I will surely go down in future episodes because you cannot avoid it. But with all of that said, that's that situation. And that brings me to another case, and that's the Deshaun Watson case. And keep in mind that we're talking about the line between being an asshole and being a criminal. And in Prince's case, a violent abuser of women, to me, which is criminal. And as I read the details, it seemed more assholish. Okay. And now we're getting to the second case, like I said, Deshaun Watson. Now, for people that don't know, Deshaun Watson is a quarterback for the Houston Texans, and he's been accused of by 20 quote unquote massage therapists. And before I get into the details, I will say that the reason that I put the massage therapist thing in quotes is because these are women that he met on Instagram. So these were either Instagram models who were posing as massage therapists or massage therapists who were doing part-time Instagram modeling on the side. I don't know which is which. And this is this is when I have to speak to, like I do in every episode, about how this podcast skews more toward an older demographic. And as a 50-year-old man, it seems to me that if I wanted a massage, I would do a Google search of reputable massage parlors in the area, in this case, Houston, in my case, Atlanta, to find massage therapists. Now, Deshaun Watson isn't 50 years old. He's in his 20s. And so maybe the 20-year-old culture is, if you need a massage, you go to Instagram. If you need services, legit services, you go to Instagram. I wasn't aware of that, but hey, like I said, there's a bit of an age gap between myself and Deshaun Watson. So he chose to go the Instagram route. And so these 20 massage therapists, they have gotten together in a class action lawsuit to accuse him of things from sexual harassment to all out sexual abuse. Now, two different things: sexual harassment, that goes into assholish; sexual abuse, that goes to criminal. He needs to be in jail. So as I went into the details of this case, because not all of the accusers have spoken out publicly about what they've been through, but of the few that have, I was reading, and it was kind of strange. Their their retelling of what happened. Like, for example, there was one woman who said that Deshaun Watson hit her up and they made an appointment at her parents' house to for him to show up there and get a massage. So he goes there, he gets a massage, and during the course of his getting a massage, while she was rubbing his legs, as she was getting closer up his thighs, I guess he was laying on his stomach. Well, I don't know if he was laying on his stomach or his back, to be honest. But while she was moving up his legs with the massage, he was encouraging her repeatedly to that he was just saying things like, you can get closer, move up closer toward the groin area. The implication was that he was trying to get her to go up to his groin and eventually massage his dick. And that's what she took from it. And while that might be true, she refused and he wound up leaving. Now, again, context is key. It didn't say whether he left in a huff or she refused to do it and he got angry and stormed out of the place. None of that was said. It just said, when talking about what happened, that's all that she mentioned happened. Okay, assholish, maybe criminal. mm, I don't get that. And then the other part, then another account was from a woman who said that she gave him a massage. He was naked. And after the massage was over, he did try to hit on her. He did try to get on. She refused. As he was getting up, his dick was hard, and he walked past her and brushed his dick past her shoulder while he walked by. I guess she was sitting down or whatever, and he got up and walked by her, and his dick brushed across her shoulder. And that was the extent of it. Now, again, there's the whole thing about being an asshole versus whether this is criminal. And to speak to how these things are interpreted in this day and age, it's funny because, you know, as someone of a particular age and from women that I talk to, women in my age range, they talk like, shoot, if that's the worst thing that happened, I mean, but we live in a new era. And these women that are feeling this way and who have filed this lawsuit, they are not of in this age range. So to them, that goes into the category of something that might be criminal, definitely something that carries enough weight that they can file a lawsuit and at least tax the dude. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not excusing one or the other. I'm not saying that if a behavior falls more on the asshole side, like, I'm not saying that that's cool just because it's not criminal. I'm not saying taking your dick and brushing it up against a woman. I'm not saying that's a cool thing to do. I'm not saying that telling a woman, whether it's direct or indirect, to rub your dick. I'm not saying that that's cool either. So I'm not meaning to take one side over the other. But eh, but what I am saying or questioning, and that's all I'm really doing is questioning, is y- where's the line here? And are those things, while being asshole-ish, are they as egregious as these women are making it? And that's not me asking in a leading way, but it is interesting conversation. And that's part of the reason that I chose those two examples, the Prince example and this example with Deshaun Watson, was because there's a lot of gray there that can be up for interpretation. And what I mean by that is, in both those cases, Prince obviously can't speak, he's dead. So he can't give his side of the story. Um, Deshaun Watson, he has chosen not to say anything. And so we're only getting the one side of these stories from the accusers. And in an argument between two spouses, or an argument that I'll get into with somebody that I'm in a relationship with, it's funny how me and the women that I'm dating, or was dating at the time, or women that I were dating, it's funny how we could get into an argument, and after the dust is settled and cooler heads have prevailed and we're recapping the argument, I found that we'll be arguing about two different things. I'll ask her, okay, what was your point in this? What started this, in your opinion? And she'll tell a story that had absolutely nothing to do with how I saw it, what I thought started it, what I thought escalated it. It's like two totally different perspectives in what we think. But the one thing that we'll both say is that we saw each other as being wrong in the argument. So that whole men are from Venus and women are from Mars, or however that goes, I always get that wrong, always get it confused. But two people from two different planets, if they're not going to agree, if they're going to see things differently in an argument, and that's with somebody that you're in a relationship with, imagine how much more off you can be if you disagree with somebody that you barely even know. So if you're these women meeting Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson comes off some way and you see it as sexual harassment or sexual abuse or whatever like that, and Deshaun Watson is like, yo, I got naked for a massage. I walked past her. It was accidental. Was it? I don't know. Or if he says, yeah, I was encouraging her to like move up toward my groin because my groin was tight. I'm an athlete. And, if you're giving me a massage, I need a massage. Is that legit? Is it not? I'm not a massage therapist and I've only gotten one massage in my life. So I am not the master of what a massage is. But when talking about how people see things differently, I think those two cases kind of speak to that. And then the third case, which is really weird, that I thought about, was the whole Tiny and Ti saga. And for people that don't know that, they're actually being accused of sex trafficking and drugging women. And let me just say before I continue on this track, in all three of those cases, the Prince, the Deshaun Watson, and in the Ti Tiny case, there have been no charges that have been filed, nothing criminal. So it's all accusations and lawsuits, and a couple of cases. So that just leads to more gray area and stuff like that. But going back to Ti and Tiny, basically the gist with them is that, from what I read, Ti and Tiny, hey, they've been married for a long time. They're not into the traditional ways of sex, which I applaud. I'm definitely a fan of not necessarily going the traditional route. You do what you need to do to make a marriage work. And as long as your spouse agrees with it, hey, do what you all do. So where it gets muddy is that they've recruited women, or allegedly they recruited women, and they would have sex with them, both Ti Tiny, sometimes Tiny and not Ti, whatever. And Where it gets into sex trafficking is because allegedly they've flown some women in from other states, and one of the accusations by one of the women is that when the women walk into the house, the first thing that they have to do is take an ecstasy pill. So that's where everything gets kind of weird, and then it gets into they had sex, and then you get to the question as to why you chose to like stay there. If you didn't want to be, you could have left. No one says that they forced you to do anything, but then there's the question of if you had to take drugs to get in, were you even able to consent or to turn down the advancements? All of that again gets muddy. Again, these are the accusers who are saying this. Ti isn't saying anything, Tiny isn't saying anything except to say that they're innocent in all of this. But yeah, so that's just another thing, which brings me to an interesting thing that clouds the which makes things cloudy and muddy to me in this case. And this is case in general, and it speaks to, again, my being a 50-year-old man, a person a person of a particular age, the demographic of this podcast. The women that have accused Ti, because this is a serious accusation, and when I read the headline again, I'm thinking, shoot, this is jail stuff. This is criminal stuff. They need to be in jail. But then my question is, if something happened to you, why is your first option to go publicly shame them on Instagram? I would have thought that the first option would have been to go to the police. That's where I think those things should belong. Those things should, that's where I think those things belong. But in these cases, they chose to air all of this stuff out over Instagram. And to me, if this is true, public shaming on social media versus having them serve time in jail, I'm going to choose jail. And maybe again, that speaks to generational differences. And the younger generation, that's the way they see things. Instead of going to the police, they go to Instagram. So that's that's interesting. Now, those are three cases that I chose specifically because they all spoke to the whole thing about how the lines are blurred. But I think the one thing that's apparent in all of this is that as men, I don't think I'm breaking any news to the fellas out there that we need to move differently. The way that things were done back in my day when I was 20 and even up until recently, we can't do that anymore. We kind of have to take assumption off the table in some cases, in a lot of cases. And I know that like messes up the whole idea of spontaneity and things like that. And the whole thing where it's like no means yes. And that's something that I've heard women talk about, no meaning yes, being coy and wanting the man to be more aggressive and stuff like that. So it affects both genders. But for guys out here, yeah, the rules have changed. And instead of bitching about how the rules have changed, I think that we just need to accept the changes, adapt to the changes, and just move on without going into all the details. Because I don't want to be publicly shamed on social media. And I definitely don't want to go to jail. I don't want to be sued. I don't want any drama. All I want is peace. So, whatever you need to do as a man, we need to do it. We need to do it and find that peace and keep that peace. And so, yeah, acknowledge that things have changed. Acknowledge that women see things differently from we do. Acknowledge that things that we do as men can be seen as innocuous and innocent. And to them, it can be seen as harmful or threatening. And yeah, especially for somebody who is older like myself, you know, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and not saying I'm an old dog, but yeah, it is odd for me to, when it seems obvious that the moment has presented itself to take an aggressive stance, yeah, it might not be the worst thing in the world to just take a second step and say, hey, am I sure this is what I'm getting from this? And while you don't want to get into the whole mindset of asking for permission for everything that you do, may I kiss you now? Can we have sex now? Still, yeah, better to be safe than sorry. So that's that. And again, I'm not making any judgments on any of those brothers. I'm not making any judgments about any of those accusers. I am just, if anything, I am just speaking out loudly, thinking out loud, and yeah, just asking questions out loud. And hopefully, God willing, the truth will come out and time will tell as to what happens to these brothers and these sisters. God bless them all. Now, that's enough said about that. And in closing, I don't want to link those three examples, Prince, Deshaun Watson, and T.I., to what I'm about to speak on next. This is separate. It's kind of tied together, but I mean it to be a separate thing because by tying it together, it kind of implies that I'm saying that the guys are guilty in those three cases. And that's definitely not what I want to do. It's definitely not what I want to do. But that's why I say it's separate. I read an article in Time magazine, and the headline of the article, and I want to get this right, it's entitled Suicide Among Black Girls is a Mental Health Crisis Hiding in Plain Sight. And while I won't get into the details of all of the article, the one thing that stood out to me in that article is that the article says that 15% of Black female high school students have attempted suicide. And this is, I don't know the date range. I think it had it in the article, but regardless of when that was, it, whether it was last year, over the past 5 years, over the past 100 years, I don't care. 15% of Black female high school students have attempted suicide. Now, I know a lot of people that have thought about suicide and have wanted their lives to end, things like that, but they haven't gone as far as to attempt suicide. 15% of Black female high school students have attempted suicide. And in closing, I just want to say, and this is my soapbox moment. It seems like I'm having one of these at the end of all of these podcasts, but today's soapbox moment is that we need to do a better job of protecting our women, especially our Black women and our Black girls. And by saying that, again, I'm not passing any judgment on the three cases that I talked about earlier. This is totally separate, whether those are BS or not. Like I said before, time will tell. But this speaks to how fellas need to be more mindful. And when I say mindful, it's like mindful as fathers to daughters, but also mindful to fathers who have sons and teaching our sons. And I don't have any sons or daughters, thank goodness. Boy, I can't be thankful enough for that. No kids, no drama. But we need to be mindful in teaching our sons how to treat girls. And as they grow older, teaching our boys how to treat women and how to treat girls as they become women. And what it comes to, bottom line, is we need to respect each other. I know in a couple of these episodes, I talked about the need for us to be kind to one another, because that really is a big thing for me. But especially in this case, when that 15% number really jumped out at me, and and I don't want anybody to get me wrong. On this very podcast, I am the one that has said that I don't particularly like women. I love them, and I'm definitely sexually attracted to them. And I'm also the same one who've had women on this show who've said that they don't like men, and they'll talk about how they love them, love us, and how they're sexually attracted to us, but they don't like us. And I think we need to work harder on bridging that gap between liking one another, because that liking one another is going to lead to that respect that we need to have for one another. And while me and Reggie, on the podcast, we've often questioned women as in terms of what leadership looks like to them and what they want in a leader, because they always talk about they want a man to lead. This is one of those cases where I don't have a problem being a leader. We need to look out for our women. We need to look out for our Black women. We need to look out for our Black girls, because anybody that sees that number and doesn't see that as a problem or sees that as a path to blame women for stuff like that. There are a lot of things that I'll blame women for, and I do that a lot. But this isn't one of them. Black men, we need to look out for our women. We need to do a better job of protecting our women. We need to do a better job of shielding our women. And we need to do a better job of raising our Black girls to be strong Black women, not strong in that strong, independent way, because I think that's harmful to Black women, but legitimately strong to the point where you don't have to say that you're strong and independent. The fact that it's there and people can see it, and not in a way where your strength means that you're polarizing or pushing others away. Being strong is saying that you need help. Being strong is saying that you want help. Being strong is saying that you want somebody in your life. Being strong is saying that you need somebody in your life. Being strong isn't trying to prove that you can do everything by yourself, that you want to do everything by yourself, and all of that stuff. And yeah, we need to look out for each other. We need to be kinder to each other. We need to bridge that gap between not liking each other while loving each other and being sexually attracted to each other. So I love women, and I am working on liking women more, and women need to work on liking us as men more. And yeah, because we can't have this. We can't have our Black girls suffering like this. We cannot have it. Yeah, and especially particularly fathers, do your jobs. Do your jobs. Shout out to all the fathers out there. The one thing I will say, and this is really in closing, I know several men who are fathers, and they are damn good fathers. It's like, matter of fact, looking at the people that I know, the friends that I have, I don't know that I know any that are trifling fathers. So shout out, even though, don't get me wrong, ladies, I know that there are some trifling fathers out there. But yeah, shout out to all the brothers out there who are handling business, holding it down. And I've had conversations with several of you. I know it is not easy, but shout out to you all for doing what you do. And let's continue to do that. Let's continue to lift our Black women, our Black girls up. And that is it for me. Thank you all for coming. Datingwhileadulting.com. Go there, send me messages, comment on, go there, see the YouTube post, go to our YouTube channel, go to our Instagram page. Also, writing articles at datingwhileadulting.com. Go read the blog post, all that good stuff. Hit me up at podcast at datingwhileadulting.com. Reggie's still around, so you can hit him up at Rettenbush at datingwhileadulting.com. You can see the links to the emails, to how to get to the email at datingwhileadulting.com if you don't write it down, because who's writing stuff down anymore? But again, thank you all for checking out the podcast. And until next time, I will say goodbye. It's like I hear the music in my head because the music is playing. Bye.